r/the10thDentist. 3JIT33N says, is lolicon ethical is a genuinely complex question that is almost always massively oversimplified. While most lolicon defenders are extremely obnoxious, they genuinely have a point. If they simply phrased their argument as, I'm a pedophile, but I recognize that it is unethical to have sex with real children. I believe that lolicon is a harmless outlet for my sexual fantasies, it would be pretty reasonable. Unfortunately, since Noon wants the label pedophile, the argument instead often devolves into nonsense about what counts as a child. This isn't to say there are no good arguments against it. The most obvious is the amount of people who say lolicon has been used as a tool to groom them. In addition, just because most people who use it won't be affected by it doesn't mean all of them won't be. I feel like there's a harmful culture of laughing at the idea of thinking about this deeply or considering it a serious question. Stiliastor says, I'd like to see some stats on whether people who consume that kind of stuff commit more or less sex crimes than people who don't. Sfactalks99 says, I don't see how those stats could exist. Do people accurately survey the population asking who watches lolly? Mushroomman642 says, it's like asking someone if they are racist. The vast majority of actual racists would never admit that they are, especially to some research organization looking for data. Alvicina0412 says, there needs to be destigmatizing done around offering and seeking therapy for pedophilia specifically. It's not well researched on how to treat medically, and it's clearly not healthy. A con is not a substitute for therapy, and in this case, making that mistake leads to trauma. Animus Corpus says, I'm a child victim and this is how I feel. I actually despise the kill the pedis rhetoric I see so often, because I genuinely think it makes things worse. At its best it's just people playing out some selfish power fantasy of getting to kill bad guys. At worst it's stopping people with a problem seeking help and potentially turning child abuse into child murder. If you really care about victims, you need to think about prevention, not retribution. Also please talk to kids about bodily autonomy, not trusting adults who want you to keep secrets, and foster an environment where they won't feel like they'll be in trouble for admitting they did something bad. Most victims are made to believe they've done something bad as means of keeping it secretive. Also, stop assuming pedophiles are some dangerous stranger you're going to easily identify. Chances are it's someone you know and trust. Someone you would never think is capable of it. Also, to anyone else who has been through it, there's more of us than you think. I want you to know you are seen. You are loved. You are deserving of happiness. But most of all, I want you to know it's not your fault. It was never your fault. Please talk to someone about it. The healing is hard, but it's worth it. r/the10thDentist. Rich Industry 339 says, early access video games and early releases should cost more. Predatory monetization is one of the preeminent problems in gaming. Everybody knows about it and everybody hates them. People will always defend certain gaming practices such as video games costing $60 and $70, arguing that this is necessary because game development is getting more and more complex and complicated. They argue they need to make even more profits. We all hate early access and pre-orders, but a good amount of them still buy them. So for the devs to make their profit, for early access is continuing, and for non-absurd gaming prices, anything above $39.99. The early access and pre-orders can cost the big bucks. GFXJG says, I find it hilarious that you think anything above $39.99 is absurd. So at literally no point in history has video game pricing been sensible in your mind? Because AAA have always been around $60. In fact, you'd argue they've actually gotten cheaper over time, as inflation has been ever present, but prices have remained around $60. Dethastus says, Hello, I'm a big game company, and I think this is a great idea. From now on, I'll release my early access games for twice as much, but never actually finish them. People are going to play them expecting me to eventually release a finished version, but they are going to pay me more for it, and I never have to do anything. Great idea, Opus. Important Sound 772 says, if this happened they would just do both higher pre-order costs and predatory monetization if it becomes standard practice to have higher pre-order costs. Cry 90210 says, I doubt many would be interested in buying a game that they knew its price would fall in a few months. So all this extra profit per unit wouldn't amount to much. You'd get far fewer sales and piss off your potential customers in the future as they see you trying to exploit your biggest fans, the early adapters. And then, for the rest of the game's lifespan, you're saying price the game at $39.99. So most AAA devs will not only make less of a profit from early access, they will annoy their customer base and make $20 less in revenue per unit sold. This model would be far less profitable. r/the10thDentist. 10th row ANC says, calling people strong after trauma is annoying, TW. It generally makes me want to puke lol. Victims didn't choose to be strong, it was forced on them. Calling them strong almost seems to minimize the trauma and ignore their very real suffering. People aren't strong or in any way better off post-trauma than pre-trauma. It seems like a word that helps other people be off the hook for not being helpful, like, oh, you'll be fine, you've been through this before, you're so strong, I've been told I'm resilient a ton of times. I don't want to be resilient. I had no choice. I wanted to peacefully exist. I'm not strong, I'm numb lol. Historically, people who are seen as strong have been denied help. In the past, sexual harassment claims wouldn't be taken seriously if the victim was too well adjusted. Some goes for accommodations. Severe Bicycle 9469 says, just because it was forced on you doesn't take away from it being impressive. Lots of people aren't able to remain strong or resilient. Obviously it would have been better to not have that experience at all, but clearly you've gone through things others don't think they would have done as well, and they admire that about you. If I break a chair and repair it, and my girlfriend says I did a really good job fixing that chair, obviously it would have been better that the chair never needed fixing, but the fact I've been able to repair it, and it's still usable is worth being commended for. I've been told I'm strong for things I've been through, and though I understand your sentiment, it's coming from a good place. People mean it with love. So I don't let it bother me. Sincereda K says, I would consider myself strong, since I'm still here even after all the times I wanted to / tried to kill myself because of the trauma I went through. I'm strong because I'm still here, alive, and getting help for what I went through. In that moment, when said traumatic event was happening, I wasn't strong. I was very weak actually. But I fought. I didn't give up. The fact I'm still alive and making it by means I'm strong, even though sometimes it is very tough. You can be mentally strong without being physically strong. Independent Cat 7728 says, I also hate it, like I have a friend that killed themselves, and I'm not stronger than them, because I'm still here. I think it romanticizes trauma and suffering, and not all of us feel strong. Some of us lose our goddamn minds, some of us kill ourselves. I've had many days where I want to do both. I'm not strong, I'm beaten down, and treating me as though I'm strong effectively means dodging giving me any kind of actual support, like listening to how I'm not okay. It minimizes my suffering, it's invalidating and isolating. r/the10thDentist. Sigismund Baxi says, being able to choose when to hear with a hearing aid is better than having to reduce your hearing with earplugs or ANC headphones which aren't even 100% efficient. Considering the world is filled with useless and annoying shitty sounds, Considering people are noisy as hell and 90% of what they say is pure crap anyways, I'd rather not hear anything most of the time and choose exactly which moment I'd like to be able to hear with a hearing aid, for example, to select the right information I need to collect through hearing without having to endure all other stupid sounds for no reason. Zanin says, I'm glad you're looking on the bright side, but being able to hear without aids is significantly better. I'm sure someone feels the same way about glasses. Horshack Test says, well, since you aren't in need of a hearing aid in order to hear, you don't actually know whether or not it's better. JFFF 292,827 says, people using hearing aids don't usually hear things as well with their aids as most others without aids, so it's not as simple as choosing when you want to hear. People hard of hearing often have tinnitus, so it's not the peace and quiet you think it is when they are off. Quercus Ambucus says, do you have an auditory processing disorder that makes it hard for you to screen out unwanted distracting noises? Throwaway Ob says, I would agree if hearing aids work the way you appear to think they do, but they don't. They can be so troublesome many people won't use them. They used to cause my ex pain and were very overwhelming. Murphy 83 says, you wouldn't be saying this if your hearing actually was impaired. There's countless people that would love to have good hearing. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.